The Raiders continue to add to Klint Kubiak's coaching staff, and today is the day when the franchise tag can be applied. That plus more on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for February 17th, 2026.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one sports podcast network. We're very proud of that. We're also very proud of the fact that this show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of your support and because of the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good each and every day. So we shout him out. We appreciate him. He does the work, then he does double work, sometimes triple work, to make sure that we're looking and sounding good. So we shout him out. We appreciate him. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, you know we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line for you, 707-654-4693. A lot of great calls, a lot of great texts. We'll try to squeeze in as many as possible as we close out the show as we normally do. Coming up, segment number 3. Segment number 2, we want to talk about the franchise tag. Today at 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern is when the franchise tag can be applied, start to be applied. Now, the Raiders have 25 free agents currently that they'll be addressing and kind of going up and down the roster with a fine-tooth comb to decide who's coming back and who's not. Not thinking that they're going to apply the franchise tag on anyone, but there could be some players around the league that can get the franchise tag put on them, and that could affect the Raiders moving forward. So we'll talk all things free agency, franchise tag. We'll do that with the Raiders and across the league coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, but it all has to do with the Raiders coaching staff as Klint Kubiak is feverishly trying to put it together. So the Raiders continue to make some additions on Monday and made some of the additions that we talked about on Monday's show official as well. Robbie Leonard's the defensive coordinator. We've talked about that. Defensive passing game coordinator, he stays on with the Raiders, is Joe Woods. Safeties coach is Matt Robinson. We talked about him briefly on Monday's show, but the Raiders made it official with him later on Monday, and they said that he's been named the safeties coach of the Raiders. Robinson comes to the Raiders after spending the past 5 seasons with the Ravens, working with outside linebackers in 2025 and assisting in defensive line in 2024. In 2023, he was defensive quality control coach after originally joining the Ravens in 21 as a defensive coaching fellow. Now, remember, Matt Robinson is the one that was leaving Baltimore, headed to the New York Giants, and then decided to join Klint Kubiak with the Raiders. So it wasn't defined exactly what his role was going to be. It was anticipated to be the secondary coach, but we know, in fact, now, because the Raiders made it official, he is the safeties coach. We also know the offensive coordinator is Andrew Janocko. We spent a lot of time talking about him, what he brings to the table, and the fact that he's been with Klint Kubiak every step of the way, whether that's Minnesota, New Orleans, Seattle, and now with the Raiders. Special teams coach Joe DeCamillis. They made that official on Monday as well. They put out the statement. He comes a longtime NFL special teams coach, spent the past 2 seasons serving as South Carolina's associate head coach and special teams coordinator. In 2025, was nominated for the Broyles Award for his work with special teams unit that was completely overhauled from the previous year. Also, he was at the University of Texas. Before that, 34 years in the NFL, including 32 as special teams coach. He helped lead the squad to 7 AFC or NFC championship game appearances and 4 Super Bowls, winning Super Bowl titles with the Broncos in 2015 and the Rams in 2021. He's got plenty of skins on the wall. We talked about him on Monday's show, one of those guys. He's a no-nonsense guy. He has a lot of attention to detail, and most special teams coordinators do. Obviously, that unit was not very good for the Raiders in 2025, but is expected to be a lot better, and Joe DeCamillis is going to be a big reason for it. Really excited about that hire and all that experience that he brings to the table. A new addition on Monday that was made official was the Travis Smith from the Titans, and he's actually been a longtime Raiders coach, right? He was part of the Raiders coaching staff in some capacity since 2012. Matter of fact, 10 years, 2012 to 2021. He was the Raiders' assistant defensive line coach, defensive quality control coach, outside linebackers coach, defensive assistant. That was all, like I said, in that 10-year span. So clearly he knows the organization. He knows Maxx Crosby. He knows a handful of other guys within the organization, within the team. Has been from Oakland to Las Vegas with the team. But last year, he was in Tennessee, helping Jeffrey Simmons earn his 4th career Pro Bowl honors after leading all NFL interior defensive linemen in solo tackles, tackles for loss, sacks, sack yards, quarterback pressures, pressure rate, and forced fumbles. Yeah, Jeffrey Simmons is a good one. But Travis Smith was working directly with him. He joined the Titans after spending 3 years as the defensive line coach for the Bears in 2024, where Chicago ranked 16th in sacks. 16 players registered at least 1 sack, and in 2023, the Bears led the NFL in fewest rushing yards allowed, fifth in yards per carry, and second fewest rushing touchdowns allowed. So, again, he has plenty of skins on the wall. He has plenty of experience. So you can see as his coaching staff is coming together, it's a blend of young and new, and then older and experienced. So Travis Smith, again, a guy very familiar with the Raiders, he joins the team, and they made that official, going to be the defensive line coach, taking over for Robbie Leonard as he is now the defensive coordinator. And then this one came in pretty late on Monday, and it hasn't been made official with the Raiders yet, and it hasn't been defined what his role is going to be. But Rick Dennison, he's a Seahawks run game coordinator and senior offensive advisor. According to CBS Sports, the Raiders are expected to hire Seahawks run game coordinator and senior offensive advisor Rick Dennison. He has 30 years of NFL coaching experience, including an offensive coordinator with the Bills, Broncos, and Texans. Expecting him to be the O-line coach as well. Nothing, again, has been confirmed by the Raiders. So there you go. Expected to be the offensive line coach. That was a guy that we've been talking about as a very important one. And if you're going to get a guy with 30 years of coaching experience in the National Football League, that would be a good position to have it at as the offensive line coach. And he has been the offensive line coach for a handful of years with multiple teams, including the Denver Broncos, the Jets, and the Vikings. So he comes with plenty of experience, obviously doing that with the Broncos. He knows the system that's going to be ran by Klint Kubiak. So, again, this looks like a really good hire. It has not been made official, but CBS Sports put it out there on Monday night pretty late. So that's another addition. And, again, a very important addition for the Raiders. That's one that I really wanted to focus in on, what the offensive line coach was, who it was going to be. Now, again, they can put out a statement and make it official later on today, and he'd be a completely different role. But from all expectations is he's going to be the offensive line coach. So now you've got head coach Klint Kubiak, offensive coordinator Andrew Janocko, defensive coordinator Rob Leonard, assistant head coach Mike McCoy, special teams coordinator Joe DeCamillis, defensive line coach Travis Smith, safeties coach Matt Robinson, defensive passing game coordinator Joe Woods, and expected to be offensive line coach Rick Dennison. That's how it's all coming together at this stage of the game. And again, it will get updated sooner rather than later, made official. And then at some point, maybe this week or early next week, they'll have a press conference with at least the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator, and then they can start to put the plans and pieces in place. But you can have all the coaches you want. They can have all the fancy titles that they want. If you don't have the personnel, it's not going to matter. The personnel is what's going to be most important for the Raiders to have any success this year or any year moving forward. 25 free agents is who they have right now. We'll take a look at a couple of them, plus we'll look at a couple of free agents around the National Football League that possibly could hit with the franchise tag by their respective teams. I don't think the Raiders are going to have anybody that they're going to hit with the franchise tag, but we'll talk all about that coming up. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to talk about the franchise tag as it looks at, the Raiders and also looks at some other teams across the league that could affect the Raiders. So it can be applied as of today, 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern time, and that goes all the way through March 3rd, same times, 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern. So what does the franchise tag do? It allows teams to retain a key player scheduled for unrestricted free agency with a 1-year guaranteed contract based on a formula. Top 5 salaries at the position or 120% of the previous salary. So when you look at QBs, $47.3 million is what is expected. Defensive end, $27.3. Defensive tackle, $26.3. Cornerback and safeties, $20.8. Tight end around $16 million, and running back around $14 million. So when you look at the Raiders and you think about their 25 free agents, don't have to worry about franchising the quarterback. They don't have one, right? Defensive end, Maxx is under contract. Defensive tackles, don't have one that's worth $26 million. Cornerback, $20.8 million. There's a cornerback that I'm interested in. Matter of fact, a couple cornerbacks I'm interested in for the Raiders to bring back, but not at that kind of price tag. Safety, nope. Tight end, Brock Bowers is under contract. Running back, Ashton Genty is only going into year 2. So let's take a look at a couple of the Raiders free agents that they have. And again, 25 free agents, 22 of them are unrestricted free agents. The others are either restricted or exclusive rights free agent. As a matter of fact, one of them, Caillou Blue Kelly, exclusive rights free agent, he actually led the team in creating turnovers when it came to interceptions, and he had 3. Right? The Raiders only had as a team 8. So that probably lets you know exactly where I'm going to go with the first free agent that I'm paying attention to, and that's Eric Stokes. He's an unrestricted free agent. He's the one who joined the team from Green Bay on a 1-year prove-it deal, and I thought for the most part he played really well. Now, he didn't create any turnovers. That's something that the Raiders need to get back to doing. They've had a long history of having corners that can take the ball away, see ball, get ball, right? From Hall of Famers to just really good players. It doesn't matter, they don't all have to be gold jackets, but they normally have really good corners, right? Even when they started to get older, like Terry McDaniel and Albert Lewis, like they were getting old before C. Wood was drafted, but man, they can still play, right? And of course, you've had plenty of guys from Charles to Eric Allen to Nnamdi Asomugha, right? That's just a few right there. They tried the experience with D'Angelo Hall. That didn't work, but, old man Willie Brown, he was the guy. I mean, there's plenty of dudes that have played that corner position for the Raiders. Going back in the day, Mike Haynes, obviously Lester Hayes. Like I said, I can go back to the whole history of the Raiders and cornerbacks, and for the most part, they have those guys. This year, they don't have them. And it's been a while since they've had those guys that you look at and you just felt like that they could take the ball away and change the trajectory of a game. Eric Stokes is not that guy. He didn't have any turnovers created, but I thought he played really solid ball for the Raiders at that corner position. I'm not saying he's got to be a number one corner, but I definitely believe that he's a guy worth giving a 1 year, 2 year deal to. Not something that breaks the bank. Now, with what the way he played, there might be a team that goes out there and overspends. I don't think that the Raiders are going to do that. I don't think John Spytek is going to get crazy and spend a whole lot of money on him. I sure don't expect him to put a $20.8 million franchise tag on him, but I do expect him to be a guy that they're interested in bringing back. Another guy that I'm interested in, and I don't know how this is going to play out, Daniel Carlson. Remember, we used to call him Cash Money Carlson, and then 2025 happened, and he wasn't very cash money at all. But how much of that was on him? How much was that on the process? We obviously saw the special teams coordinator, Tom McMahon, get fired halfway through the season. So obviously there was something going on with the process. Jacob Obenmeyer, he was not snapping the ball very well. There was a lot of high snaps that were going on. So throughout the process, that just throws the timing off. Again, not trying to make excuses for Daniel Carlson. His running buddy, A.J. Cole, got a contract extension before the season ever started. I was expecting that Daniel Carlson was going to get one as well. But again, didn't have a great season. Now, he finished it off really well, right, with a 60-yard field goal in Week 18 against Kansas City to give the Raiders their first victory over Kansas City ever in Allegiant Stadium. That was a great way to finish. Like, if you're gonna go out with a resume builder, that's the way to do it. Again, did not have a very good season. I'm interested to see if they're going to be willing to let him test the open market or say, you know what, he's still a really good kicker. Let's bring him back. I would be fine with bringing him back on a 1 year, 2 year deal. I think Cash Money Carlson could still be that guy. And now that Joe DeCamillis is going to be the special teams coordinator, I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot more attention to detail. The I's dotted, the T's crossed, and I think the whole process is going to be a lot smoother when it comes to what the Raiders do. So, again, not a guy that you would put the franchise tag on, but a guy I'm definitely interested in the Raiders bringing back. Thomas Booker. They made the trade with the Eagles before the season, traded Jacorian Bennett to Philadelphia, got Thomas Booker back. He's a restricted free agent, so he's got exactly 3 years of service in the league. To use this designation, the team must offer a qualifying offer, so they don't have to use the franchise tag on him, but they can give him some kind of offer, and they can keep him in the building. I do think he's good for a rotational piece. I do think he's good on the depth chart for sure, and there were some good things that he did. I definitely believe that the Raiders got the better end of that trade. Jacorian Bennett was just like he always has been, banged up. So he wasn't very valuable to the Eagles at all. Matter of fact, a lot of people I know that cover the Eagles and had called me to reach out and ask me about JB and what kind of player he was. I was like, man, I like him as a player, but he has to stay healthy. They hit me back like, yeah, Q, can you send Thomas Booker back? Jacorian Bennett ain't worth the salt. So, I think the Raiders definitely won that end of the trade. And then I mentioned his name already, Caillou Blue Kelly. He's a exclusive rights free agent, less than 2 years of experience. If a team offers a 1 year deal, he can only negotiate with them. So the Raiders, if they want to keep him in the mix and have him at least as depth, he wasn't a guy that was contributing all the time. Remember, he was in and out of the lineup last year, but he still came away with 3 interceptions. So, that's saying something about what Caillou Blue Kelly was able to do in year 2 in the National Football League. So those are some of the guys that I look at that have some interest. Obviously, the Raiders will bring back other guys as well, but those are kind of the guys that, caught my attention. Again, when you have 25 of them, you can see that this roster is going to be completely turned over. It's going to be a very new-looking roster in 2026 compared to what we're used to seeing. So how about outside of the building? Well, number 1, 2, and 3, as far as I'm concerned, free agents, Tyler Linderbaum, the center from Baltimore. He's 25 years old, 4 seasons in the league. He's going to have plenty of teams interested. There's a good chance that he gets tagged, right, which would be about $18 million a year for him at the franchise tag. The situation in Baltimore, though, when it comes to the money, is Lamar Jackson. He's what you're paying attention to. He has a $74 million salary cap hit this year. So obviously they're not going to go into the year with him at that number. So they're going to have to do something. Most likely extend him, probably give him about $60 million a year as far as a contract extension, and then that'll lower his salary cap number. There's no way they'll go into the season with $74 million against the salary cap for Lamar Jackson. They're not going to do that. But they can't afford Linderbaum while they have that number there. So there's a good chance that they'll franchise tag him and not let him out of the building. And if he is let out of the building, if they do allow him to test free agency, there will be plenty of teams that are interested. I know the Raiders are interested. I know the Chargers are interested. That's just in the AFC West, right? There's going to be a big market for Linderbaum, but that would be free agent 1, 2, and 3 if I'm the Raiders that I'm targeting. That's the guy that I'm backing up the Brinks truck to and trying to make him head his way to Vegas. That's just straight up. The next guy is also on the offensive line. Josh Jones, talked about him the other day, the right tackle from Seattle. He's 28 years old, 6 seasons in the league. He's going to be available, and he's a backup right now in Seattle. You give that dude an opportunity to compete to start, I think that's intriguing right there. And that's also not going to be a guy that's going to get hit with the franchise tag. You don't have to worry about that. Offensive linemen, you can look at them, and they'll be around, $17, $18 million, whatever the case may be. The Raiders have plenty of salary cap space, but that offensive line has got to be addressed. Right? If you have Rick Dennison coming in to coach up the offensive line, you got to give him some personnel to work with. It doesn't matter. I mean, look, you can bring in every single coach that you want to. They can have the greatest resumes ever. If you don't have the personnel, it's not going to matter at all. So I think Josh Jones is a guy Klint Kubiak knows really well. Obviously, Dennison, who was in Seattle, knows him really well also. So I think that's a no-brainer that they'll bring him in as well. Elijah Vera Tucker, the tackle from the Jets, he's another guy. He'd be like option C or D for me. 26 years old, 5 seasons. The problem with him is he's often injured. So you kind of got to take that with a grain of salt. Most of the time when guys are often injured, they don't all of a sudden get healthier, right? They don't all of a sudden be like, you know what? Now that I signed this free agent deal and I got some big money, I'm all of a sudden going to be healthier. No, they just kind of are who they are. So you just look at him and realize that if the Raiders strike out on a couple other guys, they could go in that direction. Braden Smith, the right tackle from the Colts, 8 seasons in the league, 29 years old. He's another guy that I would look at. I'd probably look at him before I look at Elijah Vera Tucker. But those are some offensive linemen that I'm definitely interested in. Linderbaum and Josh Jones would be 1 and 2 for me. Braden Smith and Elijah Vera Tucker in some capacity if, like I said, if they miss out on their other guys. As far as other positions, I'll go back to the well when it comes to Seattle. Wide receiver, kick returner, Rashid Shaheed. I've been talking about him for quite a while, ever since we all knew Klint Kubiak was going to get the head coaching job. It just makes all the sense of the world. He was there in New Orleans with Klint Kubiak. The Seattle Seahawks traded for him, right, to go to Seattle. And I know that they want to keep him, and I know they have plenty of money, but he also has an opportunity to be wide receiver number 2. He's not going to be a number 1 wide receiver, but he knows that Klint Kubiak knows how to use him. He could be a number 2 feature. You already have Brock Bowers out there. You have Big Mike. Obviously, the Raiders went and drafted Jack Besh and Dante Thornton, so he could end up being a really nice weapon for the disposal of, for Fernando Mendoza. He, like I said, not a number 1 receiver, but his kick return and punt return ability is going to give him a nice little check. So that's a dude that I definitely think would be a great addition, only because the Raiders have not had a threat in the kick return and punt return game in a very, very long time. So that's a guy that I'm prioritizing. Defensively, you look at the linebackers, Jamal Adams, free agent. Devin White, free agent. E-Rob and Landon Roberts, free agent. So I'm looking at linebacker Devin Lloyd, a first-rounder of the Jacksonville Jaguars back in 2022, turned into a Pro Bowler last season. He was able to create a bunch of turnovers. He's only 27 years old. He's the quarterback of the defense for Jacksonville. I know that they're going to probably try to hold on to him. They may use the franchise tag on him as well, but then they might not. And if not, I would have no problem if the Raiders went and made a move for him. They're going to have to do something with the linebacking room. Right now they have Lindenberg and Eichenberg. Cody Lindenberg and Tommy Eichenberg as the linebackers under contract. Right outside of that, the other guys don't have contracts, and I could see a youth movement coming. So I'm sure that there's going to be, some new additions brought into that room that aren't E-Rob and aren't Jamal Adams and aren't Devin White. I don't see those guys returning. Maybe one of them does, but I would be shocked. They're looking for guys that are really sideline to sideline, the newer style of offense of linebackers, not really the old school thumpers like a Landon Roberts who comes downhill and just thumps you. Right, and I appreciate everything that E-Rob did for the Raiders. I thought he was a hell of a leader, but you saw that he came off the field quite a bit. Right, he was on the field on early downs, but it wasn't there all 3 downs. Right, because he's just not that sideline to sideline, great in coverage type linebacker. So they have to continue to evolve that position. So Devin Lloyd is a guy that I would definitely take a look at. And then one more guy, cornerback Nahshon Wright. I just talked about earlier about the history of the Raiders and the corners. Nahshon Wright is a guy who can take the ball away, right? He's also a guy that is very familiar with the Raiders. He's an Oakland dude through and through. He's a guy that went to Laney with John Beam. Rest in peace to John Beam. He also went to Oregon State with his brother. His brother was in the Raiders organization. Nahshon and Nahshon, right? That's Rayshawn and Nahshon. They're twins. they're brothers. I know that for sure. I'm trying to remember. I'm going back to Last Chance U. But he was also a guy that was drafted by the Cowboys, and it's funny. I actually talked to him a few times when he was on the Cowboys organization. But he had a really good year last year with the Chicago Bears. Matter of fact, led the league in takeaways, 5 interceptions and 3 fumble recoveries. He wasn't even supposed to be a starter. Right, he became a first-time Pro Bowler. He has a lot of production that he's got under his belt and on his resume, so he could get a pretty decent deal. Again, another guy I don't think is going to get franchise tag, but maybe if Chicago wants to hold on to him and make sure that they keep him in the mix and that it wasn't just a one-year type fluke thing, maybe they hit him with the franchise tag, $20.8 million. I think it's a little rich, but he put in a hell of a resume for this contract year. And so that's another guy. He's got the size, 6'4", 199 pounds. I could definitely see him being added to the Raiders defense. I know Darian Porter is there as well. He continues to need some seasoning. The good thing is Joe Woods is there, who worked with him last year, so he'll continue to work with him and try to develop him into an NFL cornerback. Remember, he's really young at that position, being a converted wide receiver when he was there at Iowa State. So that's who I'm really looking at. Like I said, Linderbaum will probably be the one guy that gets hit with the franchise tag, if anybody, out of the guys that I just talked about. And the Raiders don't have anyone that I believe will get franchise tag this year. So that's what I got. What do you got? What's on your mind? Your calls and texts. We'll close out the show, 707-654-4693. We'll hear from you next. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple great sponsors we have here on the show, and the first one is Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you had to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And how about a stat that says it all? In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. Just like that. Boom. 27 hires. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching, more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes, less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, it's a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support your show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast, the Locked On Raiders podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. I also want to tell you about FanDuel. If you ever want to experience the NBA Finals live and in person, FanDuel's giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. So here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board thinking about which teams can make a deep run, it's the perfect time to lock it in. Futures is always fun this time of year. Whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title, it adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can you pick cash, but also send you to the finals. So you want it, right? You want your pick to get you some cash and take you to the NBA Finals. Maybe it's the Spurs, maybe it's the Thunder, maybe it's the Pistons, maybe it's the Knicks. Who knows? But right now is the best time of year. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Here we go, Raider Nation. It's segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts, you're off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Before we get into that, though, do want to thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Let's start off with a call from Jordan from Northern Colorado. He's calling to talk about the ESPN Fox Sports national talk shows and what narrative they're trying to push. Here's Jordan from Northern Colorado.
What's up, Q? This is Jordan from Northern Colorado calling. Longtime listener, been listening for few years now, maybe 3 or 4. Hey, man, I just want to illuminate some light on a lot of the talk shows that I listen to and ESPN and the people that run all of those big media coverages. a lot of them are out of New York, and you could tell that they're Jets fans because they want us to trade that number 1 pick to get Mendoza so bad. I mean, they may not claim on the air right in that moment that they're Jets fans, but, man, you could sniff them out over the TV. I mean, every single time the Raiders get mentioned, there's some group of people that says something along the lines of, "Oh, the Raiders are ready. You know, they're a bunch more spots away from completing the team. They should give up that number 1 trade to the Jets." And oh man, it drives me crazy. It's so funny that they want Mendoza so bad. I mean, I don't blame them. Frankly, I'd be the same way if we were number 2 and number 1. But it's just funny. On another note, I think it was a great move, but that's something that we haven't talked about a lot. I mean, bringing in Mendoza, putting together an O-line, giving him maybe a receiver, if that's going to be helpful. But if our defense score points on their own and we're relying on a rookie quarterback to just go out and drive that's going to be a lot of pressure on him. Give me your thoughts on what defensive moves we could get in this offseason and what Maxx Crosby's looking like. I mean, letting go of Ross, although we would get great capital off him, no one's Max at the end of the day, and I hope he doesn't go, but I understand if he wants out and we could cap, now's the time to do it. Thanks, Q. Appreciate everything you and Ari do. Shout out Raider Nation. Peace.
Big Jordan, thanks so much for the call, and you're not wrong. Right? Many of those outlets that you're talking about have the East Coast bias. As a guy who works for ESPN, I get it. I hear it all the time, but that's okay, right? I'm here for the pushback. I'm always here to tell these guys, for every time I hear the Raiders aren't ready for Fernando Mendoza, I keep saying, well, why? Why? You know, were the Bengals ready for Joe Burrow when they drafted him? Were the Patriots ready for Drake May? Were the Bears ready for Caleb Williams? And you could make an argument that maybe the Bears were. Remember, they had the first overall pick, and they traded it to Carolina. And the Panthers ended up getting Bryce Young. Were they ready for him? Probably not, right? Was the Tennessee Titans ready for Cam Ward last year? No. Point is, if you have a chance to get your quarterback, go get your quarterback. So, yeah, the Raiders might not be ready for Fernando Mendoza right now because the offensive line is suspect, but free agency is coming up. So if they are preparing to upgrade that offensive line, they got better coaches in place, by the way, on that offensive line, then they could be in a good position. They have a great tight end. They have a really good running back. They can add some more weapons. And, oh, by the way, he doesn't have to start. You know, I know most number 1 overall picks do start right away, but Brady has said multiple times he doesn't like rookie quarterbacks starting. So, you know, you could play the long game and decide that, oh, we're going to wait. We're going to wait 4 games. We're going to wait 5 games. We're going to wait a year. Who knows? I mean, maybe they'll play a role like the Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes, didn't let him play till the last game of the season. Probably not, but, I mean, you never know. And that's why the coaches are going to make the decision, and we'll kind of understand what they, you know, how much they're really going to embrace being patient and playing the long-term game. But thanks so much for the call. Do appreciate you. Got a text from David in the 801. He said, what's up, Q? It's David from the 801. First off, love your work. Watch the pod every day. Long-time listener, first time texting into the show. I'm a new booty. I'm just wondering about the whole Maxx Crosby issue. Don't you think he isn't saying anything because if they do trade him, he doesn't want to look bad? If he goes and says, I want to stay in Vegas, then they trade him. It's not good on him. He looks like a fool. He knows his trade value. I promise you that. He knows how many teams are interested in what the Raiders could get in return. I'm sure he sees the direction the Raiders are going and wants to stay, but can't make that big of a statement. Anyway, thanks so much. I'd love to hear your thoughts. David from the 801. Been a fan since day one. I was born in 1991. That's David in the 801. Thanks so much. And yeah, without hearing from Max himself, I'm sure he's conflicted. I think he's a guy that loves being here in Las Vegas. I know he loves Raider Nation. Obviously, Raider Nation loves him. Him and Mark Davis are very close. He's got really good business adventures going on here in town. And I'm sure he's a guy that wants to play for the Raiders for the rest of his career. He's also a guy that wants to win. Now, he's also a guy that gets paid really well. So as much as he wants to win, he also took that contract extension when they offered it to him last year. So, I mean, he's making $35 million a year. So it's not like, he's doing bad, right? He's not down bad. Myles Garrett is making 40-something, and Maxx Crosby's at 35. So, we'll see what happens. The scouting combine's coming up in a week or so. I'll be in Indianapolis. There'll be a lot of conversations. And coming out of that, we'll find out where the team stands, where Maxx Crosby stands. And right now, him probably not saying anything publicly if he wants to be here or not is probably the best in his best interest at this stage of the game. I don't think he wants to seem like the bad guy, no matter how you look at it. I don't think at the end of the day he wants to ask for a trade, and then everyone knows that he asked for a trade. And I'm sure that if he does get traded, he probably wants to say, well, hey, I had no interest in leaving, but the team thought it was the best thing for me. And they'll probably take that. They'll probably just say, hey, it was on us, as opposed to putting it on him, because, again, they have a lot of respect for him in the organization. We'll close out with a call from Jordan in Oregon. Man, it's a Jordan day. Jordan from Northern Colorado, Jordan in Oregon. He's calling to talk about the coaching staff, the new personnel in the front office, and how he hopes everyone takes a very patient approach. Here's Jordan in Oregon.
What's going on, Q? Wanted to call in, chime in. Jordan in Oregon. It's been a minute. It's been a long minute. I definitely wanted to just start off by saying appreciate everything you've been doing with the coverage of the coaching search, the pretty much everything, man. Looking back, great year as far as, the grind you've been on, and definitely look forward to my everyday listen. As always, been doing her since 2019. Just wanted to say, out of one point with all the new coach, the changes with Kubiak and company coming in, and the excitement around Mendoza, which seems to be kind of consensus no-brainer. I just hope that Raider Nation and really the higher ups involved with all this it's got to be such a patient process. Like, nothing about what they're doing resembles anything of the past, whether it was bringing in Pete, trying to catch fire, quick and hope to build off of kind of what AP had going. There's some flashes under AP, and same with looking back to McDaniels. It was coming in after a playoff year, which in all reality, anybody that watched that 21 season knows it. That was a bit of a mirage. We took a bunch of COVID games at the end, and quarterbacks not starting, and just had a lot of stuff go our way. And so it's always been this situation where somebody's expected to come in and kind of hit the ground running. And the main thing I could ever hope for, and it's kind of my positioning in all this, is just patience. There's got to be a lot of patience. Like, you need to build that first block in order to set a bit of a foundation. And I heard you the other day, you're not even going out and saying win totals, but you did throw something out. Like, I wouldn't be surprised off a 4 or 5 win season. Yeah, I'm going to double down on that. I wouldn't be surprised. I also wouldn't be upset at all about that. I mean, part of what this whole thing is, it's like a long-term future outlook. And so this team's got to build that first block, which is get these coaches and these players just in a position where they're buying in. I know that gets thrown around loosely, but the buy-in and just being set up for a long haul, good drafting, keeping guys around, keeping homegrown players around, getting that O-line built up, and just, in all reality, that 5-year deal, that should be the way that bringing the Raiders back to greatness should be looked at. It's a 5-year situation. This isn't, the baby steps here. Like, what you said, 4 or 5 wins. Yeah, I'd not only be, that seems realistic. I'd be stoked on that. I mean, you got to start somewhere, and as long as that meant we're building something. But anyway, dude, it's been a minute. Hope you're doing well. Appreciate everything you do, Q. Peace.
Jordan, thanks so much for the call. It's good to hear from you. And, yeah, man, patience is going to be the key, right? The fact that the coaching staff is young, there are a couple of coaches that are being added that have plenty of experience, which are good. Dave Camillo, Dennison, those guys, 30-plus years, that's great. But Robbie Leonard, first-time defensive coordinator. You got other guys, Janoko, first-time offensive coordinator, right? There's a lot of first-time as well. So, yeah, you're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to understand that, they play in a tough division. They have a lot of tough opponents that they'll play this year, right? They don't expect it to be turned around overnight like Jacksonville did or New England did or other teams. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't. They're just not banking on that. So, they'll kind of see how it goes. Like I mentioned earlier, we'll see if Fernando Mendoza, if in fact the Raiders draft him, he even starts. If he starts, then maybe they'll be leaning into getting him more game reps sooner rather than later to try to get him up to speed on the NFL game. Or if they play the long game, they might let a veteran start for 4 games, 5 games, 6 games before they pass the sticks on to Fernando. Maybe they'll make him wait till the bye week based off when that is, and we won't know until the schedule gets released. So, yeah, patience is going to be the key. The Raiders gave Klint Kubiak a 5-year deal for a reason. So, we'll see how he puts his staff together. I'm expecting that some of the staff that is in place this year probably won't be here next year because they'll have an opportunity to maybe bring in a couple of guys that he didn't have time to hire this year since he's so late in the process. But this is going to be evolving, right? This is a building thing. This is not something that's going to be built overnight. That is for sure. All you want to see this year, at least what I want to see competitive football. I want to see a sense of I can understand what the plan is. I want to understand what the Raiders' identity is, right? And I want to see everybody on the same page. And most of the things I just rattled off, we did not see last year. So that's going to do it for that call and for that for the show as well. I got a text from Raider Ed in Vegas, a call from Gonzo Raider in the 505, and then a text from Missouri Raider. We'll get all that coming up tomorrow. We'll continue to talk about the coaching staff. Maybe the Raiders will make some official statement on Rick Dennison and exactly what his role is going to be. If so, of course, we'll break that down on the show as well. And we'll continue to do what we do throughout the course of the week. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.